Welcome to That Was the Week That Was edition of Sharing Sox. I'm Southside Sox duty geezer Leigh Allan. With me, my son and West Coast correspondent Will. And we have many, many Sox-related things to talk about, none of which have anything to do with baseball. But before we get to that, I want to, because otherwise we totally forget this because we get into all that other stuff. We're recording this on Wednesday, the 9th of August, and this morning, The Athletic brought up a subject that we have talked about many times over the last few years. Although they say, and I couldn't read the entire article because it's paywall, but there was a lot of it before the paywall. So, and the essence of it is you can't make an error anymore in Major League Baseball. We've gone over this. And they say this year, they came up with the stats that this year is much worse than even last year or the year before. And it's been years since they called errors on anything except a throw into row Q where the guy got an extra base.
Yeah, if the ball doesn't go through your legs at an exit velocity of 80 miles per hour or less,
with a nice even bounce.
Yeah, it is insane. I've been going to a lot of games out here this year, a lot, and it just cracks me up every time. I mean, a guy will get a one-hop ground ball that goes in and out of the glove and into the outfield. That's a hit. That's a hit. With an exit velocity of 94, I'm like, these are Major League Baseball players. And I'm not saying that we're not seeing some good, clean defense. Freddie Freeman has no errors at first base for the Los Angeles Dodgers this year.
And is also hitting like 800.
Kind of telling on its own how they may be ruling some of these things, even though Freddie is very, very good. Don't get me wrong. But it has just become an absolute joke. I have been to games out here where, from my standards, I've seen 3 or 4 errors in a game where teams walk out with no errors listed. I mean, if I were a defender, I'd be thrilled. Be like, oh, I can miss anything and I don't get an error. That's pretty cool.
Well, and if you're a batter, because you get a hit. You hit a routine little two-hopper, and you got a hit, your batting average goes up. I think one reference they made was that the shortstop has to make 2 steps to his left and then blows it. Hit.
That's a hit. That's a hit. If you had to take a step, it's a hit. That's what we're talking about.
It is just guys who I think would be upset, and I maybe down in that article I mentioned, is the pitchers.
Right.
Pitchers are getting blamed for everything, and it's not their fault. And in particular, I would think pitchers for the White Sox, the worst defensive team out there for year after year after year. And they mentioned, I mean, look at Hendricks said lots about it. Lance Lynn, who we're going to talk about some more coming up, had much to say about it, how horrible the defense. And of course, a lot of that was they didn't have a left or right fielder. You just had Luis in the middle getting really disgusted last year because he was expected to play the game foul line to foul line, so he didn't care anymore. This year he's been much better since he has an actual left fielder and kind of a right fielder. But anyhow, that I just want to bring that up. We're not the only ones who noticed that it is absolutely ridiculous that there is no responsibility at all to catch a baseball.
And it's so strange of why they're doing that. I know batting average isn't as important these days, so maybe they're like, well, it's better to let the opposing team's batting average go up.
I've seen many times, and not just this year, but years in the past, where a batter will be upset and go up and argue with the official score because he didn't get a hit on his little two-hopper to second base. It's
unbelievable.
It's ridiculous. And the standards... We're going to get into standards on the White Sox.
But you're exactly right about the pitchers should be angry about this because it's making the batting average against them go way up, and it's putting guys on base all the time that they aren't actually responsible for, and yet they get the earned run if that guy scores. And you see it in virtually every single game. A borderline routine play that is then all of a sudden ruled a base hit. I don't understand the psychology behind it. Certainly there were errors in the game when I was growing. I saw one team had It might have been the Cardinals had 4 errors the other night. And I was like, what could they have done to get 4 errors? I mean, did the fielder just throw the ball into the upper deck of the stadium as a joke just to see if they could get an error? Because getting 4 errors seems almost impossible right now. It seems virtually impossible. So I don't know what's going on. I mean, they do give them out more on throws than anything else. It seems to be
because you
that,
can't avoid it because it gives an extra base.
right.
If there's a wild throw from an infielder to first, and the guy would have been out if it had been a good throw, it's going to get called a hit, unless it goes to the dugout so that he gets to second base, or it takes a crazy hop and he gets to second base. You can't give him a double.
Right,
you have to call it a hit. He's got to get his hit, even though he was 2 steps short of the base when it went by. But a hit and an error.
Yeah, but give it 2 more years, and we're going to see a lot of infield doubles. I bet a lot of infield doubles. They're going to argue that the spin that was on the ball when the fielder got it transferred to the palm of the fielder's hand.
It was a hot day. He was sweating.
He was sweating, and that's not his fault. It's hot, it's humid in some of these places. It can be very hard to grip the ball.
It's a genetic thing.
Yeah, it's really, really ridiculous. I'm glad you brought that up because it's a joke. It is an absolute joke. I'd be so pumped if I was a fielder right now. I'd be like, I can miss whatever, and I'm going to be totally fine. I'm going to have perfect fielding percentage, even though I only catch 1 out of every 3 balls. So it's going to be great for me.
It makes historical data horribly wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll have a Louis Aparicio with a fielding average less probably than a Tim Anderson, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And yes, we have more stats now, but not all of them go back that many years. And yeah, you get range factors and defensive runs saved and all that kind of stuff. But still, if a guy's being given a hit, that's not as punishing in those categories as if it's called an error. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Anyhow, we better get on to the White Sox.
Yes, the White Sox. They're still around.
Yes.
Technically.
The adventurous week. What a week. We started out with Tim Anderson assuming a southpaw boxing stance. Southpaw. Now, maybe the reason he's been such a bad fielder all these years is he's really left-handed. But
I talk about this at my slow pitch softball league a lot because I'm batting 1,000 from the left side, and I'm definitely not a left-handed thrower. But I was like, I think maybe my dad did me wrong. I think maybe I would have been a power hitter from the left side. Now, granted, they are all ruled hits in my league, and I don't think a single one of them has been an actual hit. I think it's only been errors by the second baseman. But those are hits, baby. I'm batting 1,000.
There you go. And if you make it to the majors, you got the same thing going for you. But so Tim squares off, and I think made the bad decision to do it against one of the most respected players in all of baseball, a guy who had never been suspended for a game in his entire career, who was obviously the leader of his team and defending his teammates, because he really is a team leader. And we'll get into this. There's no team leader in the White Sox.
I've never seen Jose Ramirez give a bad look to anybody. I've never seen him mouth off to anybody, ever. This is the most quiet, calm superstar in the sport. He lets his game do the talking. He always has.
And he plays every game.
Plays every game, plays hard every game. When he's not playing well, he works harder and harder and harder to get better, which he does because he is an elite baseball player. What Tim Anderson, I mean, obviously he wasn't thinking. Well, he wasn't thinking in the way that a sane person would be thinking in those moments. Ramirez slides into second base. Not a dirty slide by any means. It was a head-first slide, which tend not to be that dirty because a dirty head-first slide is going to hurt one person only, and that's the guy sliding. You tend not to lead with the head in this sport when you're trying to not get hurt. Slides through Anderson's legs, didn't even take him out, nothing dirty about it, turns around, asks for gives him the hand of like, help me get up or whatever, is what it appeared to be. Anderson clearly then said something that you can't take back. I don't know if it was about someone's mama or what it was, but said something he absolutely shouldn't have said, because Jose Ramirez then got in his face. And then Anderson squares up to box like a lefty, which made even less sense. Every single thing that happened made less sense as it went along. It was maybe the worst fight in professional sports.
And Tim has been, let's say, off the mark quite a bit lately. He's having a horrible season. That gets to you. It absolutely gets to you. And he's got off-field problems. That gets to you. I think it's just too much on. One suggestion that somebody made somewhere, I think maybe in Rick Hahn's press conference, was, if you thought of getting him some help, just a little counseling, a little something, because I mean, he's always had anger management issues, but they're really bad this year, and you can see why. But he needs somebody somehow to go, relax, guy. You're really a really good baseball player. You'll get there. Don't worry.
I totally agree with you. I think he just needs some help, because Tim is not an evil guy. There's nothing evil about Tim Anderson. He may not be the brightest light bulb, but I will say he has not been a guy throughout his career to just antagonize. He's not an Albert Bell. He's not throwing elbows going into a second baseman halfway down the base path. This is a guy who is having a horrible season on and off the field, and it is manifesting itself in the game in the worst way. And honestly has been for a couple seasons now, at which Ramirez touched on in his press conference, saying that Tim has been disrespecting the game for years. And we are out here just trying to make money for our families, and he is doing things that puts our health and safety in jeopardy, and that is uncalled for. And I can't do anything but side with Jose Ramirez 100% with that sentiment.
Yeah,
now, the fight itself,
you read on White Sox sides, of course, people are overwhelmingly taking Tim's side, because he's our guy. You defend your guy. He's almost like being your team.
But honestly, he is almost not our guy anymore. The fans are turning on him big time. The fans are turning on him, as they should be. One, because he doesn't produce anymore. But two, because he's just doing this kind of crap. I get siding with him, kind of, but look at the events that took place. Where is Jose Ramirez, the leader in this behavior? He's not. That was all Tim. Tim throws down the glove, puts up the dukes, then proceeds to somehow take a right hook to the face while Ramirez is being held back by two guys. So not only is he a bad baseball player, but Tim is also clearly a terrible mano-a-mano fighter, and then gets hit so hard that he goes down onto his seat.
And then it looked like an open hand.
It did. And if it wasn't a slap, it didn't have that sort of hook around to get the real knuckles there. It was kind of like one of these going into the face, sort of an open palm, open fist kind of thing. He went down quick, and then the teammates trying to help him off the field. He's saying, I'm fine, and the guy is seeing birds. I mean, he is not able to walk on his own, really. He got hit very hard on a punch that certainly could not have been 100% of a punch from Jose Ramirez.
No, it certainly didn't look like it.
Then you see Terry Francona's interview, which was spectacular, where the reporter leads by saying, what do you think of Ramirez's left hook? And Francona corrects him immediately. It was the right hook. And then says, it's not funny at all, but it's kind of hard not to laugh, which is true. I mean, you have a guy who throws down his glove, puts up his dukes like it's a boxing match, and then gets, cold cocked and loses the fight in the most dramatic fashion. Then goes on a Twitter, sort of a Trumpian Twitter spree of
very weird,
opaque hazy messaging that is, again, it comes back to just get the guy some help. This dude is clearly in shambles mentally, in absolute shambles. And we know that that's not what Tim is. We know that that's not what Tim is. Tim wasn't doing this stuff for years and years and years. He's always had an attitude, but it's always been about the game. And it has never been
and
this
fun.
kind of thing.
It was sometimes an in your face to the opponent, but it was in a fun.
It was the kind of in your face thing. We're at the end. You're giving each other dap at the end of the inning because
doing dozens, as it were.
The type of smack talk he was dishing as well as he was taking. It was one of those things. Now he can't take at all. He can't take it all, and he's dishing in a very inappropriate way. This will be very unpopular opinion, but if I were the White Sox, I would not pick up that option. I think it is time to part ways with Tim Anderson. He needs to go to a different organization that's going to take better care of him, that's going to help him get some help, that has some semblance of leadership. I'm around the Dodgers here. If this were happening with the Dodgers, there's no way they're not getting that guy some help. There's no way those managers aren't stepping in and trying to correct this path. It is the culture, which I'm sure is going to be our next big talking point, since we have some interesting things going on with the culture of the White Sox. But when it comes down to Tim, the guy needs help, and no matter what he's done off the field, no matter what the home situation is, this is a human being. This is a guy who absolutely deserves leadership, mentorship, a helping hand from his workplace.
I think he sought it.
I agree.
And the thing in this is, he was, the first 3 months of the year, he was literally the worst hitter in baseball. In the month of July, where we're coming up to the trade deadline, and he is in essence auditioning for other teams, suddenly he was playing well. And I don't mean he wasn't trying before. I'm sure he was. But now, I agree. Now he's auditioning, and he's got a different mindset of how he's got to go about this and how he's got to prove himself to teams. And then it got to the end of the month, and I think that he didn't go to the Dodgers. They did Ahmed Rosario instead, which had to be a real blow. And then Toronto suddenly needs a shortstop when Bichette gets hurt, and they don't take him either. They've got two choices to go with, and they get the other guy in 15 minutes instead of, obviously didn't even talk to Hahn about Tim. And that's got to have hurt. And now we're in August, and I think he's 4 for 20 with 8 strikeouts or something like that. He's suffering again. I mean, he needs to be
they always say a lot of times in these scenarios, guys will do something that's a cry for help. And in a lot of ways, that fight kind of felt like that watching. It felt like a guy who was literally at the end of his rope, and nobody's helping him. Nobody's, teaching him how to handle these off the field issues or the on the field issues, which we'll talk about a little bit more after our break, of course, as we get into the culture and the other things that have come up. But nobody's helping this man. And there's a lot of stigma, particularly in his community, about getting that kind of help. You need leadership from older people to tell you it is okay to address these things and help this man get right.
And for the first time ever, and Hahn, much as I thought Hahn's press conference was an act of abject stupidity, it wasn't all that way. And one of the things he mentioned was that for the first time ever, and I've seen it done, Major League Baseball is allowing an IL stint for mental health. And I've seen at least a couple of those. And I don't remember who they
definitely.
were.
No,
we
definitely have
those this season.
There's been quite a few, actually. I think 15-day IL stints for that.
And that's a really good thing. And in a way, 6-game suspension, they'll appeal it, it'll go down to 5. That may be good for Tim, but he's not going out and getting the break is good. He's not going out and getting the counseling or whatever he needs on that end, which is unfortunate. And we sound here like we're really dumping on Tim, and we both loved Tim for many years.
Yeah,
he's fallen apart, and he really needs some help to get it back together.
He really, really does. And I truly hope that if the White Sox aren't going to handle this in the appropriate way, which I have zero faith that they will. I hope that he ends up on a different team next year, gets another chance, and gets to be in a healthier clubhouse organization, which we will touch on right after this break in a dramatic fashion, thanks to Keenan Middleton and Lance Lynn, among others. So stick around and we'll be right back on Sharing Sox. Welcome back to Sharing Sox. We talked about Tim in the first half. Let's move on to the rest of this disaster of an organization, which kind of kicked off with Keenan Middleton going to the Yankees saying, I will shave my beard right now. I want to go to a place that has rules, and the White Sox have no rules. And without throwing current management under the bus, he did say it seemed to be a holdover from previous years, which we all know who was running the show in previous years. But it was as scathing of a review of your previous place of employment as you can possibly have. I mean, it's shocking to see that come from a middle relief pitcher, especially a guy who's, wasn't with the franchise all that long and didn't pitch in the majors all that long, which tells you it was really, really, really bad while he was there.
Yeah, he's got a lot of years in the majors, but never as a star. The most fun to me on that, before we get to the response from the team, was Lance Lynn. Because Middleton, okay, he's a middle reliever. Maybe he's got a grudge or something. He wanted to be a closer. Lance Lynn. And was that AJ's podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah. So AJ asked Lynn about what Middleton said. And Lance goes, well, I'll tell you the part that he got wrong.
We didn't freeze. Lance Lynn went with
and he
the rock star
and
bit
this slow
of
smile
silence.
Comes over his face.
30 seconds
over
almost.
AJ's face going, oh, yeah, I understand. So it's because this all predates Middleton anyway. Of course, Lance has been around for a few years. So, yeah, I mean, big trouble. And then Jesse Rogers, beyond all those things being said, on ESPN was talking about Moncada never works. And with Yohan, I don't know. Has his back been bad all this time and he's just playing in pain and he shouldn't be? I think his career is almost over. It's an old third baseman ailment to have a bad back, and it takes a lot of them out early, and maybe it's done that to him.
I do think Moncada, and we've witnessed this, kind of starting from his music video era on, has just not really been present. I don't get the impression that he loves the game the way that he previously did. Now, that's not to say that he couldn't if he were somewhere else. I think Moncada is one of the most disappointing, players in recent memory, and not because of his talent. I'll say it's because of his talent. His talent is unbelievable. Trust me, we have watched this guy play from the minute he got to the United States. This guy, if he had the right leadership and could stay healthy, I mean, you're talking about a guy with elite physical baseball talent.
You see it defensively. You still see it defensively.
When he turns it on, you still see it. I mean, even some days offensively, when he decides to be locked in and decides to be present, he can go off on anybody on any given day. But he is, I think, also in a place where the clubhouse culture is not going to be good for a guy like him. And, of course, Rogers threw Moncada under the bus, and also Eloy, who he said was all smiles but doesn't work hard, which is kind of what we've
it's not a shock.
It's
not really a shock. You're just such a lovable guy. You don't want to say. Yeah.
Exactly. And you put a young, happy-go-lucky guy in this scenario with no leadership, with no vision, with trickle-down garbage from the GM and ownership. I mean, is it his fault that he's not working hard and that he's lost? Is that really on him? I mean, you got to remember that a lot of these guys are kids when they come up. Or very young adults, these are guys who are still figuring out who they are. So when you come into this environment where you're all of a sudden you're making millions of dollars, and this happens a ton in basketball as well, and football, all the major sports, you get these young guys making millions of dollars. If they don't have good leadership, it does not go well. It does not go well. It never has, and it never will. They think, oh, we're giving these guys millions of dollars. They should be great. Well, they are young, and a lot of them are wealthy for the first time. And you put them in this environment, and when you have terrible ownership, you have terrible management, both general management, front office, and in the dugout, bad management. These guys are going to stray. They're going to get lost, and I don't necessarily blame them. I mean, that's a tough position to be in. Yes, you're making millions of dollars, but if you have no one who's teaching you how to be a better player, how to be a better man, you're likely not going to find that on your own. And it's very rare when guys do, and it's very special when they do. So again, I think it comes down to a lot of what we were talking about with Tim is not having a work environment that breeds success in any way, shape, or form. And that's not to say these guys are soft in any way. This is a tough career. It is grueling. A lot of times you play 162 games in 185 days or so in the heat in the summer, and you have huge expectations. You have people booing you, people cheering for you. You don't know what you're going to get that day. Management, ownership is so important for that clubhouse culture that can make a team gel. And, I'm not surprised to see Lance Lynn back up Middleton on this kind of thing. I'm not surprised to see Rogers coming out and talking about it as well. That organization is
let's get Grandal in there too. And I've not been a Yes Money Grandal fan, not for the reasons I listed here, but because I think he's a whiner.
Yeah.
But what Rogers came out and says what the word on Grandal was that the pitchers don't like him. He doesn't support his pitchers. Then the other thing came up where Grandal wanted to leave the day before the All-Star break, and Tim really got angry about that in a leadership way. Good Tim in this case.
Yeah.
He wants to go and buy him his ticket. And then Tim was in the hot tub and Grandal came by and slapped him. Now Hans says that's a lie. Grandal's denied it. You think he's lying? Well, yeah. I don't know, but I think it's possible.
Why lie about it? Why lie about it? It's not like it was a pivotal moment. Nothing helps you by making up this interaction. So no. I don't understand why you would lie about it. And maybe it's blown out of proportion. Maybe it wasn't, a super aggressive move.
Maybe it was just a head pat.
Yeah, exactly. Tim's got some flair for the dramatic. So it could just be a little bit of that. But what was even more telling to me about Grandal was Middleton and in reality Lynn confirming that he is just a nightmare for the pitchers to work with. And if that's your main catcher.
Well, and he hasn't been a good catcher for 6 years maybe.
But there's a difference between not being a good catcher.
He got good defensive run save numbers and various catcher numbers, but he hasn't for a very long time.
But there's a difference between not being a good catcher and being highly problematic towards your pitching staff. Yeah. There's a lot of guys who aren't great catchers in Major League Baseball who aren't contributing negatively in reality towards the pitching staff in too pivotal of a way.
And my guess is that reputation, because ball players talk to ball players and other teams, and so do the managers and general managers. My guess is that may be a reason that they couldn't get rid of him at the trade deadline. Even presumably giving money. I think, he, in fairness now to his money, he's old for a catcher. He's got no knees. He's probably better off just retiring and let it go at that.
Absolutely.
But now, the next the things that we get the Hans response, which was let's throw Middleton under any bus that we can find here. And he came to me and apologized for doing something bad. I didn't think it was that bad, but we don't know what it was. We're just blaming him for whatever because Rick said, what stays in the clubhouse? But then what Han does is we had some problems. We knew we had some problems with people who weren't pulling for the team, just themselves. But we got rid of those.
Yeah.
Got rid of those at the trade deadline. Now, there are 7 guys that went at the trade deadline. He's not talking about Middleton because he's already talked about Middleton. Plus, we know this culture problem predates this year and Middleton wasn't there. So he's got 6 guys left. and he has thrown them under the red line.
Yeah.
Because now it's all, well, which one of these guys is the guys that's such a terrible human being that did this kind of stuff? Which one was it? And you got to sit there and guess. And my
Well,
guess is probably none of them. But
yeah, because I'm like,
but
Giolito, definitely not Giolito. Guy has a
Giolito's the guy they elected to be their team rep.
golden reputation, loved the White Sox. I think was one of the only guys actually trying to right the ship there at times. Struggling in Los Angeles, but it's not Giolito. I don't think it's Lance Lynn because Lance Lynn
Lynn is
resigned.
possible because Lance is, I mean, again, if it even exists, because he's outspoken and has been. I mean,
Sure.
he and Liam Hendricks were the two last year going for Christ's sake, catch the ball.
He's outspoken, but is he ever wrong? That's the thing.
Not
He's not a whiner about things that aren't happening. He's definitely not a whiner. He is a outspoken. He goes after people the way he goes after batters, which is unapologetically aggressive. And if that was a problem for them because they were running a garbage organization and Lance Lynn was telling you this is a garbage organization, I don't think that's on Lance Lynn. In fact, I think getting rid of him is just trying to ignore your problems. Look at the other guys who left.
We got four relievers: Lopez, Kelly. Kelly's a bit of a hothead. Who knows?
Kelly is beloved in the clubhouse. Kelly is beloved in the clubhouse.
Right, so we won't go with Kelly. We've got Graveman.
Doesn't seem like he says enough to be a real problem.
Graveman seems like a kind of guy you just pass in the hall and you say hi.
Yeah, super quiet.
I'm missing a reliever somewhere.
Lopez.
Oh, Lopez. Yeah.
Another guy where
it just seems like a quiet guy goes about his business. Now, Hahn had said originally when they were getting into this, well, we're only going to let go guys who are going to be gone in a year anyway, which all of the pitchers fit. All six of the pitchers fit. You know who doesn't fit? Is Jake Burger. I have a very, very hard time believing that the only guy who ever this year looked like he enjoys the game of baseball was one who was upsetting the clubhouse culture because he's so selfish.
I can't put the likelihood of that at 0%, but I'm willing to go 0.00001 on Jake Burger being the issue. There is just nothing about Jake Burger that makes it seem like he would be difficult to work with at all. The guy, as you just said, the guy seems to actually like the game of baseball. Maybe that was the problem because they were breeding a clubhouse that makes you hate the game of baseball that they didn't like. They were like, oh, Jake Burger, why is he having fun? We better get him out of here. That trade made no sense to me whatsoever. I mean, good for the Marlins, but why Jake Burger is now a Marlin is so confusing.
And on his first game, now he's not done. I just looked it up before we started talking. Then he's only 4 for 20 or something like that with the Marlins. But first day, he had a homer, a homer that was instrumental in winning a game. And his statement was, "I haven't had this much fun playing baseball for a long time."
Yeah.
So that's an interesting that is not casting aspersions on anyone. That's not saying bad things about your former teammates, but it is.
Yeah.
It is.
It definitely is.
Could it be he wasn't having fun because they were losing all the time? Yeah. That could be the sole reason.
But the Marlins haven't been good since they got him. It's not like you went to the Marlins and the Marlins are on the top street. The Marlins are slowly fading into oblivion right now. So it's not like you got over there and all of a sudden you're in this winning culture.
That's because Luis Ariz isn't hitting 500 anymore.
I don't know. He's down to a paltry 375 or something. But that says a lot. That says a lot. And, getting rid of Jake Burger, who I totally thought was one of the only guys maybe worth keeping, not because he's great, but because he's got power and a good attitude. And it seems like that's pretty valuable to the White Sox organization. But they let him go despite having years of control. Just an absolute bonehead move. I mean, Rick Hahn got some good stuff in these trades. However, he got good stuff in these trades because other teams did stupid things more than he did really smart things. He took top prospects in bad trades way more than he did finding a golden person in the list of prospects and bringing them into the White Sox organization. I I can't even really give him any credit for what went down at the deadline. Yes, he unloaded guys, but he was going to unload guys. I mean, everybody, all the talk going into the deadline was, are the White Sox going to get rid of all 26? You know, what are they going to do? Who all's going? Almost everybody's going to go. So it's not like this was genius to be like, oh, I'm going to make these deals. Yeah, he got a lot from Lucas Giolito, but that is on the Angels being absolutely stupid and giving up their only two good prospects to try to keep Shohei Ohtani by showing that we're going to make moves.
And which, frankly, that's something they had to do.
It is.
The Angels were in a desperate situation where Ohtani was concerned. And I should point out, Lucas had a meh game his first game out, horrible one his second time up, pitched last night, that'd be Tuesday night, and had a quality start. Gave up 3 runs.
Yeah, he was all right.
Innings, but all 3 runs were in 1 inning. His other 5 innings were clean.
Yeah.
So he's doing fine. Lance is doing well. All of the relievers are doing well. I think a couple of them have had a bad inning. Not bad inning, but 1 run inning. I don't think anybody's given up more one run inning.
Lance has been pitching stellar.
And he's still giving up homers. He's given up 4 homers in his 2 starts, I believe, 3 and then 1.
Solo shots.
But he's not letting anybody else on base, so they're just solo shots.
Well, and that's the thing with Lance Lynn, when he's pitching well, he's still going to give up solo home runs because he's, as I said before, he's unapologetically aggressive. He is fearless, and sometimes that's to a fault. He grooves a lot of fastballs right down the middle. He tries to beat you with the fastball, which is only 94, 95 miles per hour. So unless it's got some good location, guys are going to hit that ball hard. But, in today's game, giving up 1 to 3 solo shots is almost always going to get you a win if you're on a team with an offense that's worth anything. So Lance is looking like exactly what the Dodgers needed him to be, which is a guy who's going to eat innings, work hard. I was able to watch his first bullpen session in Los Angeles. He was, with Mark Pryor the whole time, looking at grips, looking at an iPad that was showing all different sorts of grips on how to grip these pitches. He was making adjustments. This is a guy who's been around a long time. He could just come in and say, I'm going to play the way I'm going to play. They were laughing. They were smiling. He is working on his pitching at becoming a better pitcher. That tells me what the environment was like where he was, that those things were not happening. Or if they were trying to happen, the culture was so bad it was just disregarded. Which, I've said that the Ethan Katz experiment is over. I'm not laying culture blame on Ethan Katz at all. But I will say I don't think he's the pitching coach guru that we all hoped that he was going to be.
Although, I think it's still out on that because there's still guys who come to the team.
I know you do.
And get better and get better. And that's a key. Middleton was one.
Yeah, for sure. But it is very telling when you send all these guys out and you start to see them play better, play smarter, start doing new things, approaching the game in new ways. I mean, I've learned a lot watching a lot of pregame stuff at Dodger Stadium, and just the amount of work that they're putting in. I was there when Ahmed Rosario was moving to second base for the first time, and the third base coach Dino for the Dodgers was out there for over an hour just having Rosario cut across second base for a double play. Just the same motion over and over to get that footwork right, to get those mechanics right, to get that. I've never seen that pregame at the White Sox. I mean, I've seen them take some fly balls, some ground balls, but I haven't seen that kind of hands-on coaching with Major League Baseball players. And I don't think it exists there. I really don't think it exists there. Or we would have seen it at some point. We get to the ballpark early enough when we're in Chicago that we would see something like that. And, this is not, at 1 p.m. for a night game. This is when the gates are open. Rosario is out there learning how to cover second base. And that says a lot. Freddie Freeman's taking hundreds of ground balls at shortstop because he wants to get better at fielding ground balls. I mentioned earlier on the podcast, this is a guy with 0 errors this year. That kind of work ethic we do not see from the White Sox in any way, shape, or form. And there is no one to blame for that but management and front office. It is a trickle-down nightmare in that organization right now. And we have said this 1,000 times, but until Reinsdorf is gone and Williams and Hahn are gone, I don't think anything will change on the south side of Chicago.
I agree. Which is probably a good way to wrap up.
I think it is. It's a good uplifting final note. Yes, that is all the time we have for today. We will be off next week, but we will be back the week after that when the White Sox are somehow in first place. Although there's not actually enough days between now and then for them to get into first place. So that's a spoiler alert on that one. But thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you in a couple weeks right back here on Sharing Sox.